I went into nursing with the intent to become a nurse midwife. So as a new nurse, I came out with hopes of going into labor and delivery to, further my knowledge to become a nurse midwife in the future. And unfortunately, you had to have 2 years of experience, or you had to know somebody on a labor and delivery unit. And I didn't have either of those things, and I was restless. So I decided to look elsewhere. And that's when I started doing other work in women's health, and that's when I got introduced to the Center for Choice. So that was my first experience going into the abortion industry. Working at the Center for Choice felt very service-oriented to me. Caring for the women in the recovery room, everybody cries. It's quite an adjustment for a woman after she's had an abortion procedure done. And so I just really wanted to make them as comfortable as possible, but also help them to have a plan to never have to consider abortion again in the future. Shortly after my stint at the Center for Choice, I ended up with Planned Parenthood. And the local Planned Parenthood did not provide abortion services at that time. However, they did refer, and they had a grant that would help women who were low income access that service. In Planned Parenthood, I went from being a nurse to HIV counselor to STD examiner, went on to become a women's health nurse practitioner, and then I became a mother and a Christian. And so when I became a Christian, that changed the dynamic of how I looked at things. And one day I was sent to one of our sister affiliates in Columbus to learn a new procedure to do the contraceptive implant. And so the morning was a day of just learning. In the afternoon, I found out I would be in the abortion clinic providing that service to women after their abortions. I began to feel really uneasy because at that point it had been about 10 years since I had been in an abortion clinic. And so I wasn't very comfortable going back into it, and I was trying to figure out why. So on the drive there, just a lot going through my mind, a lot of talking with God, and a lot of what's my problem here? I'm pro-choice. But I was feeling conflicted. When I walked into the building, I saw the women. And it was no longer just the women and their circumstance. I saw the life within. I saw the generations who were going to be affected by this. And I began to pray. And God's presence was just so palpable. And He opened my eyes to what was really going on around me. I saw the business transaction of it all, disguised as care. And I didn't stay. I looked at my supervisor from that sister affiliate and I said, I've seen enough and it's time for me to go. In the car ride home, my manager, we got to talking and I asked her what their manager's meeting was about, and that's when I learned they were meeting about quotas. And I had asked, what type of quotas, and she had mentioned abortion quotas. And I asked if our numbers were going down, and she said, well, no. And I said, well, that's not good. And she kind of chuckled, and I said, isn't that our mission to make ourselves out of business and make abortion numbers go down? And she said, no. She said, we don't want our abortion numbers to go down. So, well, that 97% of what we do is preventive health services and only 3% is abortion care. And she said, well, that's what we want the public to believe. And I thought, well, that's what I believe. From there, I knew I would be resigning. I already knew when I was in the abortion clinic I would be resigning, but that really solidified things. When the desire is to increase abortion quotas, I could never get behind that mission. I don't know how anybody could be behind that mission. And so from there, a lot of prayer and a lot of support from just a few friends as I navigated my way out. So years went by, and one of the people I had reached out to was Barb Bruce. And Barb Bruce was a pastor at Cedar Creek Church at the time, and I reached out to her when I knew I would be resigning because biblically I was newer in faith, and so I needed a little spiritual guidance on how do I do this and what does this look like. And she was there for me. And so fast forward some years, she was going to MC for the Pregnancy Center Sweet Endings. And so she reached out to me and said, Savannah Martin would like to contact you. and told me a little bit about Savannah. And I had worked with Planned Parenthood for nearly 15 years, and when you work for Planned Parenthood, you really get a lot of warnings about pro-life people. And so I had not had any interactions really with pro-life people other than becoming pro-life myself. And so I thought, gosh, am I really gonna walk into this place? Because I just thought it was gonna be people who are just deceiving women. The opposite is true. I didn't know that at the time. And so I took the call and I met with Savannah at the center. I remember walking through the center. I remember thinking, gosh, what a great resource this is. I wish I would have known about this. I could have sent women here because of everything that they do offer to the community and to these women to help them to be successful in their pregnancies. And at the end of walking through the center, I remember stopping in front of the chapel and thinking, I do not belong here. Like, if they knew, they would not want me here. Well, Savannah knew, because she said, Caroline, I understand that you used to work for Planned Parenthood. And I said, Savannah, I worked for the Center for Choice as well. She said, I'd like to hear your testimony. So I sat down and I shared it, and I thought, wow, they know and they're welcoming me here anyway. And so that's where that relationship began. And then Abby was going to be coming in 2 weeks to speak for Sweet Endings, and so I was invited to that. I can put myself right back in that pew and watch her talk. And when she brought up the quotas, and I thought, oh my gosh, like, I'm not the only one who knows this, because at the time I thought, I'm keeping all this information to myself. I could cause national outrage. And I thought, I don't need to. She's already taken care of it. And so then I learned about, and then there were none from there. And then I joined that ministry and went on those retreats and found a whole different level of healing from there. One of the beauties of the Haven and trying to get together with a former abortion worker like myself is to reach out also to the abortion workers that are right across the driveway at the Haven. Those generally, I will say, from the people I have met and experienced, their intentions are to help women in an abortion facility. You just think very differently from the pro-choice side than you do from the pro-life side. From the pro-choice side, my thoughts were so much on the circumstances that the woman was going through. And then from the pro-life side, you see the life within involved as well, which you don't see that so much when you're pro-choice. So your intention is to serve women and help women, and you do think you're doing a good service for them. And you don't realize the conflict until you look at it from the other perspective, and you can own that. So I've enjoyed teaming up with the Haven so that hopefully there can be a relationship that is built between those of us on the pro-life side with those who are working in the facility and make it more neighborly. Recently, I was invited to speak with a group of women from the Haven. It can be a tricky space when you have a former abortion worker speak with a group of women who've been hurt by abortion and who are trying to heal. It was such a beautiful experience for everyone involved. You don't realize how much healing needs to take place until you have those opportunities to share with one another. And the forgiveness of it all has been so beautiful and complimentary. And I really appreciate it.